Good day. Despite having a large fan following and numerous books and games released, Warhammer 40k is still relatively obscure, which is precisely why I'm dedicating the entire month of November to Warhammer 40k. This month we're going to be taking a look at Tau Fire Warrior, which we're going to be taking a look at today, Space Marine, Eisenhorn, and finally, the German fan film Dominatus. Now before we get into Tau Fire Warrior, we're actually going to take a look at a bit of Warhammer 40k history. Warhammer 40k was first introduced in 1987. It was created by Rick Priestley and Andy Chambers. And one could say that 40k was a bit more influential than Star Wars because Star Wars at least got 3 movies, and 40k was a tabletop war game. That's right, Warhammer 40k before anything else is a tabletop war game where you have extremely expensive miniatures that you move around a board. Now, Tau Fire Warrior is by no means the first video game released to cash in on the Warhammer 40k franchise. In fact, it's not even the first-person shooter to cash in on it either. From what I've been able to determine, Space Crusade was the very first Warhammer 40k game ever released, and it was based on the 40k board game of the same name. It was released on a variety of different consoles, and the one we're looking at here is the Commodore 64 version. The game has you playing as Space Marines, and you have 3 chapters to choose from. The Space Marines themselves are represented by these squares. Combat is a numbers game, and really, this game looks really quite boring to say the least. Space Hulk, Vengeance of the Blood Ravens, was the first 40k game that was a first-person shooter. The graphics actually look to be fairly good, and the voices actually sound good. And overall, the game looks like it could actually be fun. And now we can finally take a look at Fire Warrior. And needless to say, it is a very grim game. But is it grim in a good way, or grim in a bad way? Well, let's find out. The first problem with this game is the fact that it's a bad PC port. For one, you have no options. You can't change the screen resolution, the mouse sensitivity, nothing. The only options that do appear in the game itself, and then it's only audio options. It's pretty sad when the PS2 version is much more customizable. And it's even more sad when the PS2 version got a higher score. The game itself is a first-person shooter, and it's a decent one at that. It follows the 2-weapon rule, which was common then, and, well, it's common now for that matter. Although it doesn't follow it very well. You can carry 2 weapons, but you can only pick up 1. So basically you're stuck carrying 1 Tau weapon all the time. So if you're out of ammo in that 1 weapon, well, tough luck. For a game that came out in 2004, you certainly have some really basic objectives. All you really do in the game is run and gun and collect keys and blow up things. That's really it. One annoying thing about not having access to options is the fact that you can't turn off auto-aiming, which means that most of the time you're going to blow through half a mag just to kill 1 enemy. And grenades aren't very good either, as you can only really kill 1 enemy at a time with them, thus negating their usefulness somewhat. Graphically, the game looks decent, although it couldn't even hope to compare with modern graphics, and at the time it couldn't even compete with Halo 1. But at the very least, the levels are fairly complex and well detailed. The guns have some variety to them, and the NPCs, while all looking identical, look fairly decent as well, although the faces leave something to be desired. The cutscenes, of which there are very, very few, look really good and are actually superior in animation quality to that horrid Ultramarines film. The sound design is not very good, the guns have very flat sounds, and overall the sounds of battle are not very compelling at all. As for the music, it's not good either, and half the time I forgot it was even there. The voice acting ranges from really bad to really good. Most of the lines are just recycled over and over and over again. But there is at least one character that has a really good voice actor that we will look at later. Like with other games at the time, and now for that matter, you have a commander that bosses you around, and I swear he has got to be voiced by Mel Brooks.
Do not fail your trial. your skills and honor the Firecast.
And may the Schwartz be with you!
And so in the course of following orders from Commander Mel, you're going to be using a surprisingly large amount of guns. Although most of the time you'll be using the las gun or the chaos bolter. The first weapon you get after you leave the dropship is the Tau rifle. It has moderate range and a very slow rate of fire. And when you first get it, you only have one magazine for it. What kind of military organization lets their troops go into battle with one magazine? No wonder the Imperium of Man is winning if all their enemies are that poorly equipped. Almost immediately you find a las gun, and it has decent firepower and moderate range and extremely plentiful ammo. Later in the game, you can actually pick up a shotgun, and it's a classic shotgun at that, since it can kill just about anything in a single hit. You can also find a plasma gun, and it works fairly well against large enemies, but it will usually take a few hits to kill a Space Marine or Chaos Space Marine, so you're probably going to want to stick with the bolter. This weapon comes in two varieties, Imperial and Chaos, and they function pretty much the same and can take out a Space Marine or a Chaos Space Marine fairly quickly. You can also get access to a Tau chain gun, and by the time you get it, it's pretty much useless. And it should only be used if you're out of ammo in your second weapon. Now the final Tau weapon is the railgun, and it's not that bad, as it can kill a Chaos Space Marine in 2 hits, but the rate of fire is really low. So I suggest sticking with the bolter or plasma gun most of the time. You also have a sword that your character uses more like a nightstick. Just look at that horrible animation, and the sound is so bloody cartoonish. Look at this, he's not even holding the bloody thing. The enemies are pretty boring. Through most of the game, you're going to be facing Imperial Guardsmen, and then eventually you'll face Space Marines, which shouldn't even be possible, seeing as how each Space Marine is pretty much a one-man army. But hey, this is a game, so perhaps these are just the crap Space Marines that all the other chapters look down upon. They are green after all, so perhaps they're just green. You also have to fight Chaos Space Marines, and they are not the personifications of horror that they are in the novels. In fact, with the right weapons, you can kill a lot of them fairly quickly. You have to fight what I think are commissars. They're armed with pistols that take down your shields in only a couple of hits, even though the las guns take numerous hits. Let's just say it's a hell pistol. And they also have chain swords, which can actually kill you fairly quickly. I challenge you to a duel! Screw this. Now, with any Warhammer 40k game, there has got to be a significant story. And the story for Fire Warrior is deep for a video game story, but really, it's hard to fit into canon, which Black Library did with the release of the Fire Warrior novelization. Now, both the book and the game have a very Doom-like feel. Basically, Case, in this book, just kills everyone he comes into contact with. I mean, he's taking out Space Marines left and right. So basically, Case is more or less Tau guy. In the game, you play as Case, a rookie fire warrior that is deployed to first help rescue a captured Tau leader, and in the process he fights through various trenches, killing scores of guardsmen that are probably far more experienced than he is, until he reaches a prison complex where he basically fights the entire complement of prison guards, until he faces off with Governor Severus, the main antagonist in the game.
I remember you. I forget nothing. The Astartes will not be here forever, Tau.
Sean Pertwee certainly likes to crop up in a lot of my videos, doesn't he? You don't actually fight Severus at this point. Instead, he sends a Space Marine to kill you. Now, one would think that this game would end right now, seeing as how Case should stand no chance against a Space Marine, but of course, you are able to kill him fairly easily. Really? A rookie fire warrior is going to take down a Space Marine. Now you gotta remember, Space Marines have decades of combat experience, extremely advanced power armor, and powerful weapons. Really, Case should have just been evaporated by him. Now in the book, it's mentioned that Case has this thing called a Montau devil in his mind, and that's pushing him to greater power levels or something. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The book doesn't even really come close to an explanation as to why Case is this good. I guess we could just say he's Tau Guy, but how did he become Tau Guy? In Doom, it made a little bit of sense. Not much, but a little. Honestly, I think that Case might be a prototype Tau Space Marine. Because when you think about it, the Tau have extremely advanced technology and they need a prototype, so maybe Case is... forget it. In the end, the rest of the story is actually quite compelling, and despite having some dubiously canon elements, it is still a good example of a Warhammer 40k story. And that is Tau Fire Warrior. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just really, really average. The PC version is a very sloppy PC port. Really, the PS2 version is better, and that is just sad. Now, if you're a die-hard 40k fan, and you can find this game for really, really cheap on the PS2, I recommend playing through it once and saying, yay, I played through Fire Warrior. But really, I wouldn't bother with it after one playthrough. For next time, I'm going to be reviewing the much, much better game, Space Marine. But for now, this is Generallotz wishing you good Bulletstorm, good Time Splitters 2, or whatever makes you happy.